On June 17th, 1939, a crowd of people began to form outside of this unremarkable building in Versailles, which is a city in France. The atmosphere in this crowd was electric. They all knew why they were there. They knew what they were about to see, but even still, there was a lot of nervous anticipation. Between 1 and 2 a.m., the doors of this unremarkable building opened up, and a group of men dressed in the same dark uniforms came out and didn't say a word to the crowd, and they began constructing this kind of strange wooden structure. And so by about 3 a.m., this structure was built, and they placed this large basket next to the structure, and then these men packed up their tools and the remaining pieces of lumber, and they turned around and they went right back inside the doors into the building and were gone. And then around 4:45 a.m., the sun had come up, and so the press was out in full force with their cameras trained at the doors of this building. Those doors swung open, and standing in the threshold was 31-year-old Eugene Weidmann, who was a convicted serial killer. His arms were tied behind his back, and the collar of his white shirt had been tucked down inside because they needed his neck to be free and clear because he was about to be beheaded. So the two guards on either side of Eugene, they pulled him forward out towards the crowd so the executioners behind him, who were dressed all in black, could filter out and take up positions alongside the guillotine, which is that wooden structure that had been built earlier in the morning. And so as Eugene is being brought out towards the crowd went wild. They were shrieking and howling and laughing and pointing and booing. And so eventually the two guards turned him and walked him directly towards the base of the guillotine, at which point the executioners that had taken up their positions around this device, they grabbed him and slid him forward until his head poked through this opening at the very far end, at which point his neck was positioned right under this huge blade that was dangling right above him, and his head was positioned over a metal bucket on the ground, which he would be looking directly at. At this point, the crowd was at a fever pitch, and one of the executioners pulled a lever, the blade came soaring down, and it removed his head fell into the bin, and the executioners pushed his torso into the basket that had been placed out there earlier, and then the executioners and the prison guards, they gathered up Eugene's body parts and went right back inside of the building, which was a prison. At this point, the crowd was cheering and going wild, and they ran up and began dabbing their scarves and their handkerchiefs in Eugene's blood, which was on the ground, as a sort of souvenir from having been at this execution. And for the next couple of days, the headlines all over France were about this bloodthirsty crowd that was cheering as this man was beheaded, and it just overall made France look really, really bad. And so French leaders decided that from that point forward, they could no longer do any more public executions. Here are some of the more notable pictures that were used in the media from Eugene Weidmann's execution.